legacy on purpose through mindset, branding, marketing, sales, systems, and team so they can make an amazing impact and income and positively affect their communities worldwide. Ensure that you are sharing this show, you're subscribing, and you also are leaving us a review so we can create more amazing content around those areas to help you level up to the next level and also bring amazing guest experts that can share their knowledge and expertise with you so that you can create amazing legacy. All right, everybody, welcome back to another show. I'm so excited to be back with you with another amazing guest and conversation. Today, we're going to focus our conversation around communication, one of those very important skills that we all need to learn as legacy builders and leaders. I'm so excited to have on our show today another amazing guest and expert in this field, Richard Newman, joining us from all the way from Richard. Where are you actually connecting from today?
So I live just outside London on the west side.
Oh, beautiful. So from London to New York. There you go. Thanks so much for coming on, Richard. I usually start off each interview with asking my guests to share a few of the most meaningful moments that led you to this work that you're doing today.
Sure. So, I mean, teaching communication is so meaningful for me because communication is something I struggled with since a very early age. So I come from a background of being incredibly shy as a child. I'm highly introvert. And also I was recently diagnosed as being autistic. And people are often surprised to hear that because I run this organization where we have a 20-person team. We get booked about 2,000 times per year to go and train people all the way around the world. We've trained about 130,000 clients across Europe, the Middle East, Asia, America, Australia, Africa, and everything in between. And I guess significant moments on that journey is that realizing how challenging I found communication when I was younger. Aged 18, when all of my friends were going off to university, I decided to go and live in a Tibetan monastery in the foothills of the Himalayas. And I was there teaching English. And the reason I went there is I really wanted to understand communication better and to help other people communicate. And when I was there, the monks didn't speak a single word of English. And so I had to use non-verbal communication, so body language and voice, to really connect with them, to engage with them and help them find their voice. So that was really a pivotal moment for me. And then when I came back to the UK, I then studied acting for 3 years in London, which really helped me expand my knowledge around communication skills, how to bring a story to life, how to engage an audience, and so on. And then the next probably pivotal moment for me was my hairdresser. So my hairdresser was talking to me about who I was and said, "What do you do?" And I said, I'd lived with these monks, I'd studied acting. And he said, if I give you a free haircut, would you come here and teach my hairdressers how to communicate better with their clients? And I said, okay. And I did that. And word of mouth started to spread from me doing this session, which then led to me training companies all the way around the world and having to build up this team. So it's been quite a journey to where I am today.
Wow, what a journey for sure, right? And it's crazy how a lot of times the things that we kind of are challenges for us really become our vocation later on once we're able to overcome them. So I see that in your story as well, and I can so resonate with that myself doing the work that I do as well. So let's start and dive into some of the more specific takeaways that our audience can really get out of our conversation. So very curious, Body Talk is that the name of the company? Let's start that. What is Body Talk?
Yeah, so Body Talk is my team where we teach people, primarily people in business, how to communicate more effectively so that they are able to get the results and respect they deserve. And this is everything from taking people who we work with MBA students at places like London Business School and NYU, Oxford and Cambridge and various other places. We show them at the start of their career, how do they make sure that they're going to make an impact, have gravitas, have presence, be able to persuade people, that sort of thing. And we go all the way up to CEOs and leadership teams and working with people on specific pitches, helping them to win massive government contracts. And to give you some idea, there's one client we worked with about 5 years ago where we helped them win every single pitch that they did in the course of a year, giving them over $1 billion of new business in the space of that time. So we do a whole range of pieces, but to get specific about what people might learn from us, One of the key areas we've worked on over the last few years is in storytelling. And storytelling is a big buzzword in business. Everyone thinks you've got to have good storytelling skills, but very few people actually understand what it is. Some people think that storytelling is about telling anecdotes, or maybe talking to people about your weekend, or explaining how historical events sometimes have importance in what we're doing day to day. And actually, none of that is really what this means. What it means is being able to take a spreadsheet, take some really dry, dull, day-to-day business information and turn it into something meaningful through the power of story. And the way that we do that is we share with people how the human brain wants to engage with information. So to get tactical with people about this, essentially there's three major areas of the brain that you want to light up, which is the survival mind, the emotional mind, and the logical mind. And if you engage those three areas of the brain with your information, it's lighting them up just the same way that a story would. So in a typical story, at the beginning, you have somebody who's having a challenge and you watch them really struggle and wrestle and you think, how is this person going to survive this situation? Then what do? You see the emotional brain gets lit up when you think they suddenly realize that maybe they can get out of their tough situation and have a much greater life. And wouldn't that be amazing? And your emotional mind is engaged thinking, is that possible? And then you see the logical journey from their challenges towards that better future they go on throughout the course of the next 2 hours of the movie. And so that's what stories do for us, or what books do for us, movies. It doesn't matter where you find them. And so if you can figure out how you can do that in day-to-day business, then you can light up someone's mind just the same way as a movie or as a book. And people remember more information, they care about what you have to say, and they're much more likely to give you the results that you want.
Yeah. Oh, I never heard of that before. The three levels of the brain and how we actually, see ourselves in the stories. Because I think that's really the power of storytelling as well. So I love that you broke that down so simply for our audience here today as well. And yeah, absolutely. And it is very confusing unless you have like a framework or a process that you practice over time, and then you figure out, your own voice within storytelling as well. But it's definitely an important skill, especially with building brands, casting visions, connecting people, growing communities, and the whole 9 yards. I think it's absolutely very important. Does body talk have anything to do with body language, Richard?
It does, yeah. So body language has been a big part of the journey of the work that we've done with people, particularly because when I was a child, when I was at school, I really struggled. I was very awkward in my communication. I didn't know really what messages I was getting from other people or how I was presenting myself across. And when I was 16 years old, somebody gave me a book on body language and said, you really need to read this. And so I read it and I was fascinated with it. And so after my experience of teaching English to the monks, where essentially I was communicating non-verbally for 6 months and then learning what my acting skills and so on, when I was starting to teach people, initially I just focused on body language, showing them how people can get more gravitas, have more authority, have more presence when they speak, making sure they can be more influential in a positive way as well. And so during the course of this time, then in 2014, I wanted to take everything that I'd learned and put it into a scientific study, because I realized that there'd been some studies done here and there on body language, but none of them really covered the information that we wanted to teach to our clients. And so we looked at all these sort of decent pieces of research and books and so on that were out there, and then realized there was a gap. And so we put together this study with the University College of London, and it's called the Non-Verbal Presence Study. And people can go and look at it online. It was published in the journal Psychology, going back a few years, between myself, Richard Newman, and Adrian Fernham, who's the head of psychology at UCL. And so we designed this study. It took us 18 months to put together. And what we found in this study, very simply, is universal ways that every human being, no matter what your age is, your gender, your skin color, no matter where you are in the world, you're able to take on certain body language traits that will increase the number of people who are convinced by your message when you speak by 42%, which was huge.
Mhm.
We found a way that you could increase the number of people who would vote for you in an election by around 58% more votes, just based on making a few simple changes. You can increase the number of people who think you're a good leader by 44%. When people hear these things, they think, surely that can't be true. And when we looked at it, we thought, this is way bigger than we thought that this was going to be. But it was simply about looking at what are the most common habits that people have every day in day-to-day business, and how do we shift that across to a style that suddenly gets the greatest impact, and what would that even look like? And so small changes we found made a massive difference, essentially moving away from very common bad habits across to much more effective styles.
Mm. Wow, powerful, powerful stuff for sure. And I know how all this kind of connects together. And that would be actually my next question for you, Richard. Based on all these word leaders and the amazing work that you have done out there for years, I'm assuming at this point, what are some of the most universal things, since you mentioned that word? What are some of the most universal things that you have seen that have helped them become, have this presence when they share their message, whether it's the written word, or whether they're presenting something, or whether they're speaking? Because I know we have a full audience of leaders and influencers and thought leaders and speakers that are always interested in improving, the delivery of their message. And based on the study you shared, it's
Yeah.
amazing how a few small tweaks can make the difference between, the way that you get to engage the audience, if you know these universal things. What can you share with us?
Yeah, so true. So if I'm working with people to give them that biggest difference that they want to achieve, one of the first things that I take a look at is speaking to people about helping them stop being self-conscious and make them audience conscious. So sometimes people are so obsessed with their body language and their words and their slides and so on, they're very self-conscious on things, and that can make them feel fearful about speaking. It can actually make them a fairly dull speaker because they are not focused and engaged with the audience. So I always start with them to say, by the end of this interaction, by the end of this meeting, pitch, speech, or presentation, whatever it is, how do you want the audience to feel when they're leaving the room? By the time you leave the stage or you walk out the building, how do you want them to feel? Do you want them to feel reassured? Do you want them to feel excited? Do you want them to feel disappointed? What are we going for here? And once you then focus on that, you can then drive everything towards it. Because what I say to people is that, body language and voice, there's no right or wrong. Sometimes people say, oh no, wrong body language is when you fold your arms, or wrong body language is when you put your hands in your pockets.
When you speak with your hands, what does that mean?
There's actually no right or wrong around body language. Just like, if you're learning French, there's no right or wrong way to use the French language. As long as you get things grammatically correct, every word in the French language could be used at some point. And the same goes with body language. So you just got to figure out, firstly, how do I want people to feel by the time I leave the room? And then I need to think, okay, my story and my slides and my delivery need to focus on that feeling. And so what I first of all say to people is, when you're in the room, you've got to imagine that you're entirely focused on everybody else. What do they need to gain from this meeting in order to achieve that feeling? So let's say, for example, that you want to deliver a really strong, serious message such that people will leave the room feeling that they've got a confident, strong delivery from you, and they must take action. So one way to do that, we work with people, of course, on their story, their content, their slides, but we'd also work with them on their stance and their delivery. So as an example of this, when people are delivering a strong message, what I often see leaders do is that they'll be doing this little sway backwards and forwards from one side to the other, and they'll be doing non-committal gestures that flip and flop from one side to the other, and their facial expression isn't really showing anything. And they tend to say to me, but Richard, my message will speak for itself. And it never, ever will. If you think your message will speak for itself, email it. If you're in the room, you have to speak for yourself. And so you've got to think, well, what message do I want to give? So one of the key things that we look at sometimes is getting people grounded, to get gravitas in their body. The gravity is working equally between their left foot, right foot, toes, and heels. So they get to a piece of being centered. Then we also talk about lifting their sternum to get to a place where their body looks inspired, elevated, in a position where they're able to create a greater sense of presence. And then another simple tip that we're looking at might be around their gestures. Now you'll notice, if I gesture palms up, it looks like a question. If I gesture palms down, it looks like a strong statement. So imagine this, and for anybody listening to the podcast on the audio version, just check out the video for this piece. So if I'm to say with palms up, I'm absolutely sure these numbers are correct, and then I go palms down and say, do you have any questions? Well, that version looks like I'm saying, I don't know what I'm talking about, please don't ask any questions. If I reverse it, then I say, I'm sure the numbers are correct with palms down. And then I flip it to palms up and say, do you have any questions? Then essentially what I'm saying to you with palms down is, I know what I'm talking about, and then, hey, I'm open to all of your questions. So what we're looking for there is very simply congruency in the body language and the delivery. And this is what I learned when I was working with the monks. So when I was teaching these monks, it was such a good grounding for teaching people in communication, because when I was teaching them the word excited, if I didn't look excited and I didn't sound excited, then they had no idea what word I was trying to teach them. I could have been trying to teach them the word pineapple. It could have been anything. So I had to make sure my body language, tone of voice, and words were all headed in the same direction. And so that's what we get people to do when they're delivering a message, is to think, okay, what feeling are you aiming for? And then make sure your body projects that feeling, your hands are projecting that feeling, your facial expression, your words, your tone of voice, the slides, everything's got to be directed towards that end goal. And then the other way I like people to look at this, and this is certainly the way I look at this as a speaker, is that before you go in the room to deliver an important message, before you go to do a pitch, presentation, anything like that, you want to focus on yourself. Make sure you get clear about your message and your delivery. Then when you go into the room, you're fully focused on others. And the way that this feels for me as a speaker is like a surfer on the ocean. So, you can practice popping up onto a surfboard on the beach all you want. But as soon as you get into the ocean, you've then got to read the ocean. You've got to read the waves. You've got to be connected and present to what's happening. And the same goes if you're going to be a good communicator in any situation, in an interview, a one-to-one bit of feedback with your team, or pitching to a new client. You've got to read the ocean. You've got to pop up on your board and feel where the waves are. And that's what I do as a speaker, is just to feel the energy of an audience, where I can deliver the same message to 5 different audiences, Monday through Friday, in 5 different locations, and have a completely different experience delivering those messages, because there's a different energy that I'm feeling from the audience, and therefore a different outcome. So we always encourage people to make sure you're fully attuned to what's happening around you, and then be able to change your delivery style based on what's needed in each of the moments that you're communicating.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, thank you so much for adding such amazing value to our audience. And I could so attest to what you said as far as think of the takeaways, think of the audience, think of the service. Because when you remove yourself out of that equation, I can remember my beginnings with social media content, of how that was a challenge as well. But when you kind of think of the message and who is going to help, and there's one person needs to hear it, or 2 people in the audience, or 3, then you kind of remove yourself from all those uncertainties and insecurities that we might feel as speakers. And just like anything, I think with practice, it becomes definitely easier, and you start to find your own voice, and you start to get grounded. But absolutely, there's so much coaching and mentorship that it takes behind the scenes to kind of get to those levels, for sure. Richard, my last question for you is really around something that I also personally have constantly keep in mind, and it's something that I want to overcome, but also I know a lot of my audience can resonate with it, is accents. We tend to become, so English is not my first language. I'm natively Albanian, but I also have heard it in a lot of the clients or people that I've worked with, that sometimes speakers can become conscious around their accents, because it can come out at a different phase of stage, or especially when you're not sure of the message. I find that can really ensure that your speech is not as eloquent as someone would want to have it. So do you have some tips for people that are bilingual and they speak many languages?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, I have such huge respect for anybody that communicates in different languages. I can only currently communicate in English. There was a time when I was living in this monastery where I was fluent in Nepali as well by the end of the 6 months, because I was able to pick it up being immersed in that culture. But I only have one language. Anyway, so what I say to clients around having an accent, speaking in second language, there's a few things to keep in mind. Firstly, your accent is actually your vocal brand. So I would never suggest to people to remove their accent. Some people have accent softening classes and that sort of thing. It really isn't necessary. Your accent is your vocal brand, where instantly, if you are on a Teams call or a conference call or even a room, when people hear your voice, they instantly know it's you, because it sounds original, it sounds different, it sounds unique based on you. So there's no need to get rid of an accent. The ways to deal with the accent, though, a couple of things to think about is, firstly, what we work on with people, I was working on this with a few clients yesterday actually, is simply around enunciation. So you sometimes have to work harder in the musculature in the mouth to work to make sure that people are really crisply hearing each of your words. So you may, for anybody, depending on where you live around the world, you may be able to speak very swiftly in your own language, and it may be understood by people who are native to that language. But then suddenly, when you have an accent that may be different to most people in the room, if you're speaking quickly in a sense of flow, aiming to get your language, your words coming out in a way that sort of seems like a stream of words, then it can be much more difficult for people to hear it. So it's something that I learned very clearly again when I was living in this monastery teaching the monks. I had to have very precise, clear enunciation. Otherwise, the words were going to be completely and utterly lost. And so I brought that back into how I coach my clients. So enunciation is a piece we work on. The second thing we work on is pace, where what people tend to do is to try and sound fluent is they go fast, and it's fast that people can easily listen to. And there's an amazing thing to take a look at, which is the pace at which people with authority speak. So if you take a look at one simple measure that's been done is on presidential speeches. So if you look at people who have been voted to be president in the United States, they have their inauguration event. And typically speaking, at those inaugurations, they're speaking at around 100 words per minute. The average person speaks at 140 words per minute. And if you're speaking like a motivational speaker, you might be 180 words per minute. But if it's a serious message that has authority behind it, around 100 words per minute is where you want to be. And that feels slow when you're delivering it, but it feels powerful to the people you're speaking to. So saying less words, having pauses after every few words, and highly enunciating the key words can be very beneficial. And the last piece I would add to that as well is if you gesture on the key word, anybody who's listening to this on the audio will know, even if they didn't see the video, the word in that last sentence I gestured on was the word gesture. Because when you gesture on a word, so like I did just then, it gives you an extra power behind that word. People are more likely to hear it. So if you've got key words in a sentence, gesture on those words, and they will sound more clear to people. So even if they don't catch every word, they catch the key words and they will fully understand your message.
Well, thank you so much for this. This has been so helpful. I love what you said, that your accent is your vocal brand, right? So, yeah, instead of trying to get rid of it or whatever is it that we try to do, is kind of embrace it, and that's what makes you authentic and unique. But I love that there's also a framework on how to have that grace and presence on stage as you are comfortable with who you actually are, because that absolutely portrays in our energy and everything else that we do. So, well, Richard, we can go on, and I think this has been its own masterclass. I really thank you, appreciate the work you're doing out there in the world, and thank you for sharing all of this with our audience. In this last part of the interview, I have a few fill in the blanks for my guests. So I'm just going to go ahead and ask you, and just whatever intuitively comes out and you feel like sharing, do so, please. So my first fill in the blank is what inspires me is.
What inspires me is people who have tremendous kindness and grace under pressure.
That is absolutely inspiring. And then my next one is my purpose in business is.
Oh, my purpose in business is to help people find their voice so that they can be heard, be recognized, and be respected for their views.
All right. The top 3 books I recommend are.
Oh, top 3 books. Wow. I love books. Anyone watching the video can see these behind me. Top 3 books I recommend. I love, not related to my topic here, I really loved David Goggins' book, Can't Hurt Me. If anyone is ever feeling down, feeling like they can't go on, just listen to or read David Goggins' book, Can't Hurt Me. That one's great. I, of course, would like to give a mention for my most recent book, which is Lift Your Impact, which is the very best of the information I've shared with clients over the last 23 years to help them out with communication. And what else am I looking at? So recently I've been reading the book, Turn the Ship Around, which is all about leadership on a submarine and how they used brilliant leadership techniques to turn what was the worst performing submarine into the greatest performing submarine in the space of just a few months by having great leadership conversations.
All right. Thank you so much. Those are great recommendations. I'm definitely going to go check those out myself so I can add them to my library, as the leaders are absolutely readers. So, again, Richard, thank you so much for everything you shared. And then my last question for you is where can you be a continued resource to our audience? Where do you host your best stuff, where they can find out more information around your work?
Great, thanks. So the best place to find me and my work is ukbodytalk.com, which is where you can find my team. People can find me on LinkedIn if they'd like to as well, Richard Newman Body Talk, and I'm also on Instagram at Richard Newman Speaks.
All right, there you go. Definitely go follow Richard as I did on LinkedIn, and let's continue this conversation and continue the nurturing that we can have with each other, and the way that we can add value. So, Richard, I thank you for everything you're doing, all the amazing work you're doing out there in the world. And I want to thank you for listening and watching. Thank you so much. Share this podcast with other amazing leaders, conscious leaders that are going to find value from this amazing masterclass that we just had today with our amazing guest. Thank you so much again. I'll see you next time with another show. Bye, everybody. I want to share with you the 4 books that would change your life personally and professionally. So, the first book is Connecting the Dots Backwards, one of the books I've written that will help you connect the dots between your past, your present, and your future life vision. You will find topics in there around marketing, sales, spirituality, relationships, all the areas that you need to be fulfilled as a human being. The second book that I've written, which is a journal, accompanies the Connecting with the Dots book. And this journal will help you apply the information that you learn in the book into a journal. It has self-guided questions that you can go through and into to get the clarity that you need to discover your values, your vision, and your mission. This is a journal attaching the book as well. And then Purpose Driven Entrepreneurship is my latest book, where I have included my legacy framework in building legacy businesses, everything from mindset, branding, marketing, sales, systems, and team. And I have connected all the dots between all those areas so that you have the fundamentals that you need to build a truly legacy empire. And then my latest creation is the Focus on Purpose Planner for increased productivity and efficiency, where I have included a framework around your productivity where you can plan ahead, work on purpose, and leave amazing impact on the planet with your work. You can find any of my books on the website below, elonaloparicoaching.com books. And definitely grab your copy. Let me know, leave me a review on Amazon, and let me know how this book has impacted you and changed your life.